Good morning and welcome to this morning's episode of The Amateur in the Morning. I am your host, the Forex Amateur. And as you know, on these episodes or on this series, I like to simply cover my outlook of the synthetic indices market for the day. I need to be very specific in saying that it's synthetic indices because that is my specialty. That is where I specialize and that is what I focus on, do more of what you do best and do less of what you do mediocre or really badly, if that makes any sense. But anyway, that's my little philosopher's statement for today. Let me throw in my little disclaimer in there. Remember, I'm not qualified to provide any financial investment or even trading advice. Yes, that's right. I'm not qualified to do that. Right. Everything I speak about on these sessions is purely just my opinion on these markets, right? And trades that I take is purely taken with cash that I am willing to risk to a certain extent. So anything that you do on your side, remember, this is not a financial advice from me. Trades that you take must be based on analysis that you do and research that you do, and ensure that the money that you risk or the cash that you risk, you are willing to lose, because the reality of the situation is you could lose your entire investment, right? So today is a beautiful Wednesday morning. I'm saying beautiful just purely for the sake of this recording, to be honest, because I'm really hating the weather in Durban at the moment. It's really, really hot, really humid. It's absolutely crazy. So I'm really hating it. But anyway, you know what? We just have to thank the Lord for seeing another day. So let's talk about these markets real quick. So we're going to talk about volatility 10 really quickly. Um, and remember, I like to focus on the daily charts on these episodes or this series because fundamentally, I find that a lot of people, one of their basic challenges is being able to identify the bias for the day or being able to identify the daily bias, right? And one of the biggest keys to being able to trade profitably is being able to understand the daily bias, because if you can understand the daily bias, right? And then secondly, you have a strategy that works. You're literally about 60 to 70% the way to being able to become profitable, not really consistency, but being able to find profitability, which is two separate situations. So this is why I like to focus on the higher time frame charts on these sessions, because I want to be able to guide you if possible in how I follow my thoughts to be able to get to my daily bias, right? I do not go in detail on these sessions. The reason for that is because I'm doing this for educational purposes, not necessarily trying to give you signals on here. So hopefully it is helping you out. And if it is, just drop some comments down there if it is helping you out. If you have any solution or any comments on how you want to see it better or how I could make it better, I'd be very happy to hear your whatever advice you have. So let's talk about volatility 10. Looking at volatility 10, I did say yesterday that I am overall bearish bias yesterday. I did say that we will be seeing the wick of this sort of hammer, pin bar, whatever you want to call it, candle, right? And as you can see, yesterday's candle did push down quite a bit, right? And I did participate in this candle yesterday, so we did take a sell in here and on the paid group. I did send out a setup for a sell on there. Currently, I am still holding a sell position from here as well, which I am planning to take all the way down into this pink zone here. So overall, currently it is moving very, very well, right? But I am expecting to see a possible pullback happening today. And as you can see, I have highlighted this gray zone in here if price does get down to it. If not, anywhere between where it is now and this gray zone, we could see a possible pullback happening, right? But I am more confident in saying that it's going to happen more or less at this gray zone. So for the remainder of today, I would say perhaps possible we would maintain our sell bias on this market. As you can see, it's still pushing down really, really nicely. Um, Not really sure why I have two gray zones on here. I think I might have marked it on the H4 chart as well. Yeah, I actually marked it on the H4 as well. So that's the zone that I am looking at for a possible pullback for today, right? Obviously, it can happen a bit sooner than that, and that's just a matter of being able to understand your lower time frames and stuff like that. But it's not really something that I'm going to go into. But just looking at this, the entry that we took yesterday. So this was the entry I sent out yesterday on our paid group, and this trade that I did take as well. And we are basically targeting this level in here. And as you can see, there was basically no drawdown on this entry, because if you had put a pending order, what I generally do is I generally put like a pending order if I'm trading a pending at the beginning of here, and then I put a secondary one like at the second, at the midpoint of my zone, and then I normally use the top of the zone for a stop loss, right? So as you can see, there was basically no drawdown, probably less than a pip in terms of drawdown, and we were able to grab, I closed at 55 pips on this trade. So that was a really, really good trade where we risked, I think, about 2 pips on the stop loss here. So this was an amazing trade for me yesterday. Moving on for today, like I said, I am expecting to see a pullback on here. It's not really showing any clear signs of a pullback happening at the moment, right? But I am very wary of that possibility happening today, right? So I will be looking at, let me just grab something in here, and let's just look at a possible scenario in here. So we could look at a possible scenario where we'll see the pullback happening in, say, between 6,500 and 65, say 6,500 and 6,520. That is where I'd be expecting a possible pullback to happen in, just purely based on my FIB projection, because there is a strategy that I use just for the FIB to be able to project possible retracement entries, right? Looking at volatility 50, I don't really cover step index on here, but there is a really good trade that we took on step index as well yesterday, which did go into quite a bit of drawdown, right? But I was very confident in it, and I just basically held my analysis on that, and it did actually play out really, really well as well. Let's look at volatility 50. So I did speak about volatility 50 yesterday, and I did say that I want to see it come down into this pink zone. And I actually did participate in a sell yesterday from around this area in here, right? And I basically closed when I started to see price rejecting off the bottom in here and failing to break below this previous day's low, right? Overall, remember, fundamentally on this, we are currently bullish because it has tapped into that zone that I've been speaking about for the past couple of weeks. So if your strategy allows you to take buys, then I would be okay with looking at buys as well. But I like to get in at the best possible price for me. I really don't like to jump into a move once it's already happened. And for me, this is very late for me to be looking at buys on this market, right? But there is a huge probability that we will see this market continue to buy, right? I am currently on the H4 looking at this specific pink zone that I've got highlighted in here for a possible retracement to go back down into my lower pink zone that I'm looking at on the daily. And if it does play out really well, then I'll probably jump in. As you can see, we've got quite a bit of rejections off here at the moment on the H1 chart. And this is purely based on the H4. I marked the zone up, and it's rejecting really nicely on the H1. So once I see a willingness to go lower on the H1, then I'll most likely look for a retest maybe on the 15-minute or something for me to be able to jump in on a good position on there. But for now, I am still biased on this because it is pushing up, right? We cannot ignore the fact that we are bullish, right? But if it does give me a good entry for me to catch that retracement, then I will, because ideally, I would like to get in at, say, around 236, 236, 200 or something like that, something to that effect. So just this price here. This is ideally where I would like to get in, but I would be willing to get in slightly higher if it does give me good enough confirmations on there, right? Let's move on to, oh, this is also a really nice one as well. I think I did, yeah, I am covering 25-1S on this. So yesterday I spoke about 25-1S, or let me say for this week so far, I have been speaking about 25-1S coming into this pink zone in there. And as I said, this is not a trend line retest. The trend line is just there for me to be able to, draw my attention to the fact that we are still bullish, right? I'm not using the trend line to be able to trade, because had I been doing that, then I would have been buying here And as you can see, it just pushed up and then it smashed down immediately after that, right? So it would have been really silly for me to be looking at that. So I don't use trend lines for trading purposes, but I just use it as a guide for me to be able to look at, okay, market structure is still bullish because we're making higher lows and stuff like that, right? So that is basically what that is there for. Um, let's look at 25-1S. So I have been speaking about 25-1S getting into this pink zone, right? And we have struggled a little bit. One of the reasons that I did say it's going to get up into this pink zone that I've got highlighted in here is because of this week. Like I drew your attention to this week on Monday. I believe we spoke about it for the first time. And I did say that I generally see when we see these big weeks filling, leaving big wicks like that, for me, I look at that as unfinished business. A lot of other people will look at it as rejection and an opportunity to go short, which is okay if your strategy guides you to do that. But for me, I like to see these wicks getting filled first, and then I generally look for an entry directly after that, because the reason for that is you'll notice normally high volume comes in directly after something like that happens. So remember, overall, we've been talking about sells on this market since the upper side here, and currently it is playing out really, really well. Unfortunately, I wasn't trading last week since I think around the 22nd or 21st of October was the last time I took a trade. And I didn't really participate in this. So what I am looking at now is price pulling back into around these areas for me to be able to participate in a short. And remember, my ultimate goal is to take this all the way back to the downside here, right? I just want to draw your attention to the weekly chart again, however, is because I don't want you to be ignoring this bullish impulse here that happened on the weekly chart, right? So there is a very huge probability that price could just keep going up. But I think that is very unlikely at the moment because you can see this huge bearish candle off last week's candle. And that's showing me that there is a probability that we could go, there's a very high probability actually that we could go lower because we've been watching this zone for a couple of weeks now. So if I drop down to the H4 time frame, I haven't really looked at it on here, but as you can see, it does seem to be drawing towards this pink zone that I've got highlighted on here. So when price gets into this area here, then I will be looking to see if there's any further confirmations for me to be able to go short. But I am currently liking the price action leading up into this zone. And if I get an opportunity, then I will go short from around this pink zone that I've been talking about for the past couple of days. Let's look at volatility 75. So overall on volatility 75, as you can see that we currently are pushing up, right? This is the weekly time frame. I'm not really going to talk about it because I have spoken about it in the beginning of last month. So you can just go back and have a look at that. And I think I spoke about it a couple of times last month as well. So just have a look at some of the other episodes that I have published on the YouTube channel. Now, looking at the daily chart, as you can see that price is rejecting really hard off the top. Right, so we've got a really strong rejection off there, really strong rejection off there, and what most common traders would call a double top happening in there, right? So it's very, very possible that we will see a continuation of this bearish momentum pushing down into this pink zone in here, right? Before we see the market pull back up into around this pink zone where I would be looking to go short from, right? So I did speak about this pink zone on yesterday's session. It's not a definitive level at the moment because I haven't put much thought into it. It's just something that I've sort of thrown in there. But as price starts to get closer into that zone, that's when I'll start putting more attention into looking at, okay, the specificity of the situation and how I want to navigate taking a trade on this chart or not, right? But for now, as I've been speaking about for quite a while now, I am not really hyper focused on trading 75 because I've come to the point on my journey now where if it's not giving me what I want, I just don't worry about it. You know, there's just so many charts on here, and there's like 2 or 3 opportunities that present themselves in terms of my strategy on every single chart on a daily basis. So for me to be fixated on the fact that I can get more gains on 75 doesn't really make sense because all I can do is move on to another chart and get the same amount of gains on there. I just need to be able to know what I'm doing in order to navigate it, right? So looking at volatility 75, I really don't have any sort of conclusion based on it today. The reason for that is because we are very choppy at the moment, right? And I don't like to trade choppy markets. So I want to see it push down if it respects this double top, push down, and then I'll be looking for a buy down here. Or if it keeps going up, which is more likely because it is bullish on weekly at the moment, right? It is bullish on daily at the moment as well, you know. And I would be more drawn towards the fact that it will push further up and then bounce off around here and push back down again, right? So let's move on to, I think I've actually covered everything. Okay, yeah, I've actually covered everything, right? So these charts that I've got on here, I don't cover on these sessions. The reason for that is because right now it is reserved for paid members at the moment. But like I said, I will start to include a few other things on these sessions, perhaps looking at gold, because gold is something that I do trade on and off. Looking maybe at NASDAQ as well, because NASDAQ is something that I consistently follow. So even if I'm not trading NASDAQ, I always have a good analysis on NASDAQ as well, because I want to make sure that I'm following the story so that when I do take a trade on it, I'm not taking a trade based on a lack of information. I'm taking a trade where I followed the story all the way from once upon a time all the way to happily ever after, you know? So that's it from my side. Not really much more that I want to speak about on these markets. And as I said, I like to keep these episodes as short as possible. The episode will be up on YouTube in the next couple of minutes. And until next time, you know, it's been a pleasure as always to share. I always say this on every single episode. And the reason for that is because it is a pleasure to share. I know how difficult it's been for me to get to where I am in my journey as well, because I've had no mentor, and I've had to basically get all the information that I need myself and spend a lot of time on these markets and prepare myself. And along the way, I am making a lot of mistakes as well. And it gives me a good opportunity for me to be able to learn from those mistakes. So if I leave anything, if I can leave you guys with a bit of a side note, right, it's just keep pushing on, right? Just keep pushing on. Your biggest successes are going to be met on directly after the moment where you feel like you want to give up. And when you get to that feeling, just keep going for another week. When you get to that feeling, keep going for another month. And I promise you, it's not as hard as we try to make it seem. It's not as hard as it looks, right? All you have to do is get yourself to the point where you understand what you're doing, right? And secondly, you understand that it's okay to lose. You need to be okay with losing if you're going to be a successful trader. You need to be okay with losing, because the more you wallow in your losses, the less you're going to learn from your losses. And some of my biggest lessons have come from when I've taken a loss or blown an account, which I haven't done in about 8 months now, which is really great because I blew a lot of accounts when I first started off. But anyway, until next time, it has been a pleasure as always to share. Remember that I wish you a blessed and a profitable trading day, and I will catch up with you guys again tomorrow, same time, same place.